Our next speaker is Charles Cranfield from UTS. So we thought it would be nice if we got a non-Sydney University perspective. I actually got no idea what Charles does, although it's pharmacology, is that right?
I research biophysics, but I teach biochemistry.
Okay, it's close. So Charles is going to chat to us about engaging his science students. Thank you.
I am, and I was given this title, so it's not true. Can I thank Gareth and Paul for the invitation very kindly? Thank you. I know I've really enjoyed Dale's and Tara's speeches then because they're also biochemistry, and like me, they struggle with biochemistry students. My subject is a second-year subject. I've got 500 to 600 students in my subject, which is quite large, and there's also a summer block session, which I had to help in designing as well, which we do in like 3 weeks. We do the whole course in 3 weeks. I don't know if you do something similar here in Sydney at all. Mainly the summer block session is for those who failed the autumn. That's how we get them back. I inherited this subject in 2015, and by that time I was only 1 year an academic at UTS. I'd been pretty much full-time research before then, and so I was in a steep learning curve. There was 11 lectures, there was about 7 practicals, and 2 tutorials. And grading at the time, we had a practical score of 15%, which was fairly easy for them to get. They have to write a scientific report, which is pretty important because that teaches them about journal articles, how to write scientifically and things like that. There was an online quiz, an MCQ online quiz to help them with the first 5 lectures, just to revise the first 5 lectures. And there was a closed book exam at the end, a 3-hour closed book exam, but 55%. That's changed a bit now, I have to say. All that's changed. That's what the start was. So there were some buzzwords that came around UTS, Learning 2017 or something, or Learning Futures. You have your own buzzwords here, I'm sure. And peer-to-peer learning is considered one of the best things there is. And so how do I get 600 students to do peer-to-peer learning when I've got no space? Particularly UTS. UTS is only a very small campus. We've only got limited rooms. I had to reduce my lecture hours, for instance, just so they could accommodate for more space. So we had 2-hour, 3-hour lectures once upon a time, and we had to narrow it down to 1.5-hour lectures and try and cram everything in. It's a bit of an issue. And then how to competitively grade them on their peer-to-peer learning. Originally, the students were sending me emails saying, "Oh, do you have any question banks or anything?" And I didn't. I was only just starting. So I got them to write questions and send them to me, and I would edit them. It was hell. There was too much work to do. And then a colleague mentioned this thing, "Hey, there's this thing called PeerWise." And I looked at it, and it was the answer to my prayers at the time. And I jumped on it. My colleague didn't. Never mind. So hurrah. So in 2016, I introduced PeerWise. PeerWise, okay. But how to get student buy-in? Oh, sorry. So our grading changed. I had to put in PeerWise, and I gave him 10%. And so that was a small change. The closed book exam became a 45% closed book exam. So that's what happened for those years, 2016 and 2017. Things changed in 2018. We'll get to that in a sec. So how do you get students actively to participate in PeerWise? 10%, okay, that's good. They can participate. But then how do I grade them for that participation? And how to reward those students who actively participate more in PeerWise? So for that, I needed a very complicated grading rubric. And here is my first try at a grading rubric. I decided that I would give half a mark per question you create to a maximum of 5 marks. I wanted them to write 10 questions. And those 10 questions were really for the 10 lectures that they were given. There was an extra lecture, but that was just an introduction lecture, really. So it was about 10 lectures they were given, and I wanted them to write a question for each one. Then, for those who did better, there was a reputation score, and this is where it gets complicated. So I gave them a rank. So I ranked them all, the whole cohort, and the best student got their fraction times 2 marks or something, plus a bonus mark to a maximum of 2 marks. And so if you're in the top 65th percentile, for instance, if you're ranked in the 65th percentile, it'd be that times that plus that to give you that many marks. It's complicated. And for the answer score, it was 50 answer score points, and you get half a mark for 50 answer score points for a maximum of 3 marks, total 10 marks. The problem, so it encouraged participation by competition. That was the whole point. And all students who participated could get at least 8 marks out of 10. It was also against the university rules. Whoops. I did that for 2 years before I realised. So I had to come back, and the part that was against the rules had to be changed to that, where I simply gave them a reputation score, and the formula was that your reputation score divided by 1,000 to a maximum of 2 marks. So that was that, fixing up that once I found out that I'm being naughty. Okay, so the next problem was student usage. I wanted to outsource PeerWise. I didn't want to have to look at it. I didn't want to have to think about it. I didn't want to have to look at them week by week. There's only one of me. I'm in control of this 600 students, so I really needed some outsourcing. But all the student effort was right before the exam, right when I closed PeerWise off. And I wanted to leave it open right up to the exam so they could all get the benefit out of it. And everything was happening here. So how do I fix that? Because in particular, I wanted them, for their early lectures, I didn't want them to forget about. They were the tough questions on enzyme kinetics and energetics and things. They were the really tough questions. So I introduced a new rule. I said I wanted at least 5 questions written before the mid-semester deadline of the 4th of May, and I said to them, may the 4th be with you. And they laughed at the joke. But it was an old joke, it's everywhere. And so I introduced that. And then my student cohort started looking at But I'm okay with that. I was okay with that because it was these first lectures that I wanted to write questions on. I hadn't lectured them all these lectures yet, so they weren't going to write questions about the later lectures. They were only going to write questions related to the first lectures. And for me, that was okay. I was happy with that. We had some PeerWise junkies with some ridiculous reputation scores.
Whoa.
Some students really, really loved it. And I got great feedback in our student surveys about PeerWise too. They really, really liked it. And in 1 year, though, I looked at my top 10 and I thought, how did they go overall? And I couldn't believe it when one of them didn't pass the subject. And from then on, I had to say to the students, do not rely on PeerWise. It's a sobering thing. But when I was outsourced, I just outsourced PeerWise. I didn't come back and look at it and do all the great true and false things, which has been fantastic to learn about. I'm really keen to learn more about those sort of things. But because I just outsourced it all, I had to say to the students, do not rely on it. Do not rely on it. When I discovered that one of my top 10 didn't pass. And by the way, this is UTS students, okay? They're not Sydney Med students. Okay, I need to make that very clear. They're good students too. It's true. They're still, but a lot of them just need to do a bit more. A lot more. This year I had to drop PeerWise. I'm sad to say, I'm sorry. I had to drop it. The university has come along with a new directive and they wanted me to reduce the number of assessments. I just had too many assessments for my biochemistry subject, and I had to cram them all in. And so now we're going to open book exams as well. If you've done that already, we're not allowed closed book exams anymore. Everything has to be open book. And it doesn't make much difference. I can give them the same test, and about the same amount of people won't pass that test, even though it's open book. Yeah. They have to do the test, and if they spend all that time looking at the book, it's not going to help them. It's not going to help them. No. So anyway, I had to change things around, and I increased the practical score. I'll give them a practical test now as part of that practical score. But I had to drop PeerWise, unfortunately. And my question for 2020, if I want to bring it back, because we're moving to Canvas, you guys are already there, I think, aren't you? Yeah. Can I put PeerWise in Canvas? Yes. Oh! It's back next year. And thank you for your attention.